Hello, welcome to the EdVista DataMate Test Management Training. My name is Ana Morron, and I am the Managing Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessments at East Harlem Scholars Academies. The purpose of this training is to provide teachers and administrators with an overview of the EdVista DataMate test management features and functionalities. This video will help you learn how to create your own assessments in EdVista DataMate so you can transition from paper-based testing to computer-based testing. As you know, the New York State Education Department is currently in the process of transitioning to computer-based testing, also known as CBT. One of the ways that we can support students during this transition is to incorporate computer skills as much as possible into students' everyday learning experiences. EdVista DataMate is the premier assessment management system for New York State schools. And very important, EdVista has Nextera integrated into their system. Nextera is the same testing platform that students encounter during simulation and operational computer-based state testing. By using EdVista, students get to experience the tools, technology, format, and demands they'll face on the New York State 3 to 8 exams. So with that, let's begin our training. Of course, the first step is to head to the EdVista website, log in with your credentials, and click DataMate. If you do not have an account, please reach out to the data team for support. On this page, please go to Test Management. Here, you can see all of the tests that have been created based on user access. I'm a district administrator, so you may see more tests on my page than yours. Let's click Add Test to start. From here, we can start creating our new tests. So let's call it Practice Test and give it a grade. Let's do grade 8 math. Down here, if this was a benchmark exam, it would be specified under test type. If it's just a regular classroom exam, maybe even just a ticket, you don't have to do anything. District subject area and EVI subject area. This is pretty much the same as you would think. It's just math and math. Both of these options are for reporting purposes. For EVI, for example, what it's doing is helping it sort it within the item bank. A couple other things that I want to point out. Book and section titles. This is only if you want to separate your tests into chunks. For example, if you want to create a session 1 and session 2 exam. However, I usually just put book 1 because it keeps everything together and it makes it easier for me when I look at the data. I like to keep things easy. This is the online math toolbar. This is where teachers will pick the toolbar they need based on the grade they're creating a test for. Notice that it says Nextera. That's because EdVista has Nextera integrated into its testing platform. Online Test Calculator. This is where teachers choose which calculator they want students to have access to, either basic or scientific. Remember to check the NYSED website for guidance on which grades can use which calculators. Language for text-to-speech. This is a type of accommodation, and it is offered in different languages. Here is the option to enable grid, if you want students to have XY access and graph paper available on online tests. Please note that this is a function that the state currently does not have. However, you can enable that if you want to, though personally, I would just prefer using graph scrap paper. Once you click save, the rest of this pops up. Down here, it says edit and share. This is where you allow editing and sharing with others in your school. This is where you can collaborate with other users. For example, if I'm working with my whole department on creating a particular assessment, you can edit and share with anyone in the organization as long as they are in the system. Let's go back to the main page by clicking Test Management. If I want to go back and edit the page I was just on, I can click on Test Details. Let's add a calculator. So now I will click Update and come back to the main page. If you look at the main page, you will see different colors. The reds are the most important things that need our attention. Red is the system's way of communicating to us that it needs something to get done. Meanwhile, green means it's done, that it's been updated and we can move forward. The white parts are worth taking a look at, but they're not a requirement. So the next step would be going into the questions. As you can see, there's nothing here right now. At this point, I can add test questions one by one, or I can bulk edit questions, or I can browse bank for questions. Let's say that you already have a paper test in front of you with an answer key that you're simply transferring into DataMate. The easiest thing to do would be to bulk edit questions, since you already know what the test is supposed to look like. Through bulk edit, I can easily add 5, 10, 20 multiple choice questions with answers of A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, as well as constructive response questions. Then I click add and it populates. Since you have the answer key in front of you, it's easy to add the answers right then and there. You can also change how many points they're worth. This is bulk edit questions. It basically creates a shell which you can then go in and edit however you want. In my opinion, this may be an easier option if you already have the paper version in front of you. If you are building a test completely from scratch, then it may make more sense for you to add a question one by one. So from here, we can proceed to edit these questions. Go all the way over to this little edit button, which will bring you to the edit page of the first question. Although this looks like a lot of it has already been done for you because of the bulk edit process that we went through earlier. There is the question name, the test book, the report category, and question type, which in this case is multiple choice. You also have the answer and question weight as well as the points. As you can see, there are other fields where you can add more information. For example, the rubric and description, but these are optional and are not required in order to create assessments. Many of these are just things that if you want to fill them out, you can, but I wouldn't worry about it. One part that I do highly recommend filling out is the state standards. By entering the standards, teachers and administrators are able to better analyze the data that is produced by these assessments. In fact, using EdVista DataMate will not only help students get used to computer-based testing, it can also provide schools with so much data. There's so many exciting reports available, but it all starts here by properly coding the standards in our assessments. In this case, I'm going to select this standard and click Use Codes. Let's continue creating our question. We already chose the calculator that we wanted to be assigned to the test, but if the calculator isn't needed for this question, you can disable it if you want. Okay, so once I filled out most of everything that's important, I can finally go down and type the test question in the question box. This is a pretty standard text editor, similar to WordPad or other basic word processor. There's a lot of options here, but I prefer things to be as simple as possible. I do want to point out the Iris editor, which you can use to create special symbols in the questions themselves. Iris can be used to write formulas, equations, symbols, and more. If it's easier, you can also use it to draw instead, and it'll magically turn your handwriting into text. Just click OK when you're done, and it'll add it to the question box or the answer boxes. If your question has an extended response to it, you can also add a text box here. The text box is customizable. It can be a short answer or long answer box, basically whatever size it needs to be. And if I want to get rid of it, I just press delete. Next is my favorite part, adding pictures. Images can be embedded in questions or answers. Choose the image by clicking Choose File, followed by Upload Image. Right now, it only gives me the option to insert image in the question. That's because I haven't added any question boxes. Let's do that now. Scroll down where it says Add Answers. I'm going to select A, B, C, D. Now, when I scroll back up, ta-da! You can see that I can insert the image into my question or my answers. The question boxes are similar to the answer box, just a tad smaller. I can resize my image, I can add text and format everything in different ways. I could, if I wanted to, add pictures in every single answer box. Right now, my answers are stacked one on top of the other in a single column, but I can also click here to show my answers in 2 columns. Right here are the tools for online testing. All of these tools are customizable as well. Teachers just need to play around with these options in order to find the tools with the exact specifications they need for their particular question. Below is the online testing preview, which will show you what your question looks like. Click Update to save once you're satisfied with everything. Let's go back to the test management site and then to the questions tab. Or I can just click Return to Question List to continue to question number 2. Now, since we did question 1, you'll see that it turned blue. Anything in blue most of the times can be hovered over or clicked on. If you hover over question 1, you will see another preview of the question that you just made. However, if you want to see something really cool, click on Preview in Nextera mode. This will show you what the test is like for students, basically what they see on their end. This is my favorite way to preview questions. Now let's move on to question 2. I don't really want to do all of that work again, so instead I'm going to add questions using the question bank. I'm going to click Browse Bank, and ta-da! Here is an item bank with about 65,000 items in it right now that EdVista is adding to all the time. They have in-house assessment writers who are pretty much all retired teachers that are aligning either questions they've written to standards or writing questions based on the standards. There is a ton of stuff in here. Simply use the drop-down options to filter for the exact type of question you are looking for. EVI and Vendor are questions from EdVista. District are questions that East Harlem would create and share with schools. For now, let's look through the math questions for grade 8 that have been released from New York State. It looks like there are a lot of questions that were released from the state that we could potentially use. On the right side, you see more information about this question, like where the question came from and what year. It also provides the p-value. So on these questions, the higher the p-value, the better the question is. The lower it is, well, that usually indicates that it was like a distractor item or really not a great question for some reason. Perhaps the students didn't understand or was strangely worded, etc. Just remember, the higher the p-value, the better the question. Much to my delight, these questions are already linked to the standards right here. It's all done for me. I can click Add to my test booklet or replace a question. Now it's there in blue. I can even hover over it and see. I could even go and edit this question to my liking, but I'm pretty happy with the question already, so I'm not going to. When you add a question from the question bank, it will no longer show up in the question bank for this particular test. That way, you don't accidentally add the same question twice. However, if you want to make another test in the future and use the exact same question, it'll be there waiting for you. I do want to take a moment to point out questions from the question bank that contain a reference. This typically means questions that have a corresponding passage that a question or group of questions are referring to. Questions that have a reference are tied to that reference, so the passage will show up in the Nextera system alongside the question. Teachers can also create their own references. Let's go back to the test management site and click References. Give your reference a name and click Add Reference. Now you can go ahead and type in your reference, which in ELA is usually a passage, but in science could be a map or a diagram, just to name a few examples. For passages, I instruct teachers to create tables, which you can separate by lines or paragraphs. That's one way to do it, to keep it nice and concise and looking pretty on the other side of it and formatted right. You can also add images in the same way as before. When finished, click Update Reference. Let's create a question that refers to the reference that we just made. We will need to go back to the question list and click on the next question. Just like before, you need to add your question and your answers and any other options you want for this question. Now, this is the most important part if you want to link this question to the reference. Under References, you need to click Use the Reference and Show Before Question While Taking Test. If you do not click this, it will not make the connection and students will not see the reference they need to answer the question correctly. Okay, so now that we clicked, let's preview our test in Nextera. I'm excited to see what the reference in the question will look like. So far, this is really cool. All of my questions look exactly how I want them to look like. For the reference questions, the reference is on the left with the question on the right. And notice how these questions are grouped together so that the same reference shows up for both questions. Perfect. Another cool thing is that if I highlight here, it stays highlighted throughout the remainder of the question group. There's a lot to explore in the Nextera System Preview option. Back at the main test management page, we see that the Questions tab is green. This means we're done with that part. However, we still have to configure a few other things. We should take a look at the Scoring tab and make sure it's configured correctly. The next step is to add dates. The effective test date is the date when a group of students are scheduled to take this test. Important: do not modify the effective test date in order to give this test to another set of students that should not be grouped together with students that already took the test. If you want to use this test at a later point in time for a different group of students, you can add a second or third date as needed. We're almost done. On the left side, you will see Digital Administration. This is where you configure all the things related to computer-based testing. On the right side, you will see Print and Scan Administration. This is where you configure all the things related to paper-based testing. And yes, you can still create paper-based tests using the EdVista DataMate system. This is a great option for students with paper as their accommodation. If you need to create some paper-based exams, you can print booklets and answer sheets here, as well as upload answer sheets to the system for grading. Under Digital Administration, you will find the student login link for the test. In Online Assignment, this is where you can change the configurations for administering the test. In each test, you can do so many different things. You can force the question order or randomize the questions or answers. That makes it harder for students sitting next to each other to copy off of each other's answers. You can enable or disable certain accommodations as well. You can even let students get their grade right away, right then and there. There are also options related to test security. You could require a password to even get into the test and start it. You can click on Require a Secure Testing Environment and make it so that students cannot log into any other website while taking this test. The possibilities are endless. Say I'm done administering a test. Everyone has submitted, everyone's done. If you click on Online Test Administration, you can track the status of different tests of different classes, and if you click on Manage Students, you can track the status of individual students as well. However, what I really want to show you here is View Score Tests. All the multiple choice questions will be filled in with what students answered and automatically scored, but anything that is a constructed response question would need to be manually put in and answered. The student's answer would show next to the question, and the teacher would score the answer based on their rubric. That's it. Well, that concludes my presentation on EdVista DataMate. I want to thank you all for your time, and hopefully you feel more comfortable using this program to transition your paper-based testing to computer-based testing. If you have any questions or ideas, please feel free to reach out to your leadership team or to myself. I'm going to include my contact information here, so I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you so much. Goodbye.